The Timberwolves won their fourth straight game, beating the Cavs. How Jaden McDaniels led the Timberwolves to the win was clutch down the stretch. Next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday, including tonight from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. That's 5 to 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. It's a victory Friday as the Timberwolves hung on to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers on Thursday night. This is the post-game podcast. We're going to talk about how the Wolves did it. We're going to focus quite a bit on Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels on today's podcast. We're also going to start with how the Timberwolves overcame some early challenges, including the physicality that led to a double foul and double technicals on DeAndre Hunter and Rudy Gobert, and how Minnesota responded favorably early in this game, but it was Jaden and Julius throughout that helped lift the Timberwolves, and ultimately late, it was Jaden McDaniels down the stretch. We'll break down all the kind of ins and outs of this one. It was a really fun game, kind of a weird game of runs, even more so than a typical NBA game, it seemed like. And some interesting things. The starters were great. The bench, not so much. A lot to get into really on this one. But the moral of the story is the Wolves won their fourth straight game. They beat another good team. And they're sitting now in fourth place in the Western Conference. Believe it or not, after all the hand-wringing, all the consternation over the first 40+% of the schedule, look up and the Timberwolves are in, if the season ended today, which it doesn't, obviously, they would have home court in the first round of the playoffs. All right. First off the top, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So coming into the game, the Timberwolves, of course, won 3 straight, coming off of a nice weekend with a win over Miami on Saturday, the back-to-back travel and win over Washington on Sunday. Wizards team, pre-Trae Young trade, who had just won 4 out of 5 games. Even though they're bad, they were playing better, and then they beat Miami again on Tuesday. Now they play Cleveland Thursday, a good Cleveland team, not as good as people thought they'd be, not as good as last year's Cavaliers team. And they were up by 20 in the third quarter of this game. Ended up having to hang on. It got down to a 4-point game late in the fourth quarter, but the Timberwolves pushed back, and we'll get into some of the Jaden stuff here in just a second. But I thought the first big thing we got to hit before we get into Jaden McDaniels is how the Timberwolves overcame some of the early adversity in this game. Minnesota jumped out to a nice lead very early, forcing a Cavaliers timeout early in the first quarter. They were up 17-8. Let's see, what was it when they called timeout? Was it 17-8 when Kenny Atkinson called the timeout? I can't find where the actual timeout happened, but it was right around that. They were up double digits in the first quarter. Cavaliers called to, there it is, 17-5. They're up 17-5, up 12 very early in the game. Shortly thereafter, Cavaliers call a timeout. There's a bit more of a back and forth, and then there's a DeAndre Hunter, Rudy Gobert dust-up that leads to a double foul being called against Gobert and DeAndre Hunter, and then double technicals against Hunter and Gobert. Of course, Hunter shoves Gobert first. Would have only been a technical on Hunter, but Gobert did the thing where he puts his arms in the air like, I'm not doing anything, but then he walked directly into the bubble of DeAndre Hunter, who then shoved him again. It seemed a little bit weird that on a review like that, the Timberwolves end up losing, right? Because Gobert, that was his second personal foul, and he got shoved twice. Gobert actually didn't shove at all. Still a double technical. I get it. It was frustrating. It's weird that they called the double foul. Like, just call the technicals, or maybe it's a foul on Hunter and then double techs. Like, as it was, the Wolves lost the trade-off, and the Cavs saw a boost from that. And Gobert was already frustrated because of how physical they were being with him on short rolls. Anytime he, tried to cut or roll down the lane, really, they would shove him. They'd push him. There had been Gobert tried to rim run and get a mismatch against Donovan Mitchell. The Wolves actually saw it and tried to throw him the ball. Before Gobert ever got the ball, Mitchell was two-hand shoving, putting his shoulder into him like he was a tackling dummy in football and trying to uproot Gobert. And then when he had the ball, he was two-hand shoving him in the back, which is a foul no matter how big or small you are, no matter what age you're playing basketball. You can't two-hand shove someone back to the basket or not. And so Gobert was frustrated at that point and allowed himself to get sucked in a little bit. Credit the Cavaliers for sticking with the plan of being physical with Gobert no matter what, and ultimately frustrating Gobert into a second personal foul. Ant picked up a couple of reasonably early fouls. Not quite the same foul trouble he was in the other night, but there was some early, like, the refs let it happen, and then all of a sudden they were calling stuff, and the Cavs saw this boost, and it went from a Wolves blowout lead to the Cavs being up by, I think, as many as 7 in the second quarter of this game. They led by as many as 9 in the second quarter. And eventually by halftime, it was a 4-point Cavs lead. But that early tone that the Cavs set, they came out ahead in that Gobert dust up, if you want to call it that, with DeAndre Hunter. And they used that to energize their team. And the Timberwolves came out of the gate playing hard and hustling and going for loose balls and winning all the 50-50 balls. There were a couple of Julius Randle rebounds that were just ridiculous, that he just chased the ball down. And I don't think I've seen Randle move that quickly for a loose ball his entire time in Minnesota. Like, it was like he was shot out of a cannon multiple times in the first half of the first quarter. And then all that, like, I guess, passion that they were playing with early in this game kind of evaporated after that confrontation is a strong word, but after the disagreement that Hunter and Gobert had. And then all of a sudden it was the Cavs taking control of the first half. But I want to give credit to the Wolves for stabilizing before halftime. There were some good Anthony Edwards minutes. He hit a couple of tough shots. He was hot from outside the arc early in this game. Got into the second quarter. The Wolves bench actually did not play very well, and that's where the lead expanded to 9. Was some rough minutes from Bones Highland and Naz Reid. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But then Jaden was really good in the second quarter. Donte DiVincenzo was really good in the second quarter. There's really a lot of Jaden McDaniels and Donte DiVincenzo that allowed Minnesota to kind of hang. And then Gobert came back in late in the second quarter, hit a couple of shots in the final minute plus of the game, of the first half. And this is a 4-point game at halftime. So that's a good example of Minnesota taking the figurative punch from Cleveland, weathering the storm, not getting too emotional themselves over what they perceived to be an unfair result of that play. And then also there was some physicality on the other end. The light shove that Ant gave Jared Allen when he went flying practically into the camera guys under the basket, which was, a tenth of the contact that Mitchell was giving Gobert on the other end. And this, by the way, this is the problem with Ant too, right? Ant and Gobert, they play, they don't flop. I know Gobert does occasionally, but Ant never does. And for the most part, like, Gobert was trying to play tough in the post and not flop, but he was penalized for it. And the Wolves run into that quite a bit. So credit to Minnesota for sticking with, overall sticking with their game plan, but not allowing themselves to become too emotional over the perceived lack of justice of these calls. And, the Gobert Hunter double foul, double technical, and things just didn't entirely snowball. They started to. There were a couple of bad possessions, a couple of bad Naz turnovers consecutively, a couple of bad Bones Highland shot attempts, like some dicey moments early to mid-second quarter, but they righted the ship with McDaniels and DiVincenzo, and then the later part of the second quarter, some good Gobert minutes once again. And that leads me to the Jaden McDaniels conversation. Jaden was phenomenal in this game, and the second quarter was the first piece of the really important minutes he played. The most important thing Jaden McDaniels did was at the end of the game. This thing was a 20-point Minnesota lead in the third quarter. And we'll talk about how they built it here in a minute, but the Jaden McDaniels close to the game, in addition to what he did in the second quarter, which was huge to keep the thing from snowballing beyond a 9-point deficit, was the final couple minutes of the game. McDaniels was phenomenal. And I want to dig in on that a little bit. And we'll talk about Jaden, and then we'll talk a little Julius Randle before we get to some additional takeaways and finally some studs and duds. And that's how we'll close the show out here today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. It's Friday today. Fridays already feel different during basketball season. FanDuel's making them even better now. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off their weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, that is 5 to 6:30 p.m. Central Time, are appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. You'll always see something new. Boosts, bonuses, surprises, and more. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect It's right before the games and right before your weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without having to overthink it. Nobody wants to do that on a Friday night. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. That is 5 to 6:30 p.m. Central Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And of course, thanks for helping to make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We could not have done that. We could not have achieved that without you, the loyal listener. If you have not already, please consider going to check out the new Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Wolves. Of course, that's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. You go to lockedonwolves.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. So we talked a little bit about the Wolves dealing with adversity early and about Jaden McDaniels' big second quarter. The close to the game for Jaden was huge. Minnesota had led by as many as 20 points in the third quarter. It was 17 at the start of the fourth. Things kind of hovered in that like 10 to 15 point range for quite some time. Eventually, Cleveland gets it down. And like this was still a 21. No, excuse me. This was a 12-point game with under 5 minutes to play. Okay. Cleveland gets it down to 4 with 3 minutes to play. Ant hits a tough shot. Now it's a 6-point game. Donovan Mitchell travels. Nearly gets pushed, but instead travels. Minnesota gets the ball back, up 6 with 2 minutes left, and Jaden McDaniels hits a slot 3 from the right side. Really, actually, it was above the slot. It was really more closer to the top of the circle because Ant drives. Rudy Gobert had done such a good job all game on the short roll that the Cavaliers had to respect that Rudy was rolling down the lane, and Ant drew 2 in the paint. So there were 2 going to Ant, 1 going to Rudy, and the next pass, it wouldn't even have to be a skip pass. The next pass for Ant was Jaden, who had done the right job or done the right thing, a good job of filling in behind the space that Ant had vacated. Jaden knocks down the 3 off of the gravity of both Anthony Edwards and, yes, the gravity of Rudy Gobert on offense, which has been a thing throughout his career at times. The roll gravity is a real thing. Teams don't always respect it. Sometimes they dare Minnesota to do it. It's a funny thing because sometimes it's that, and other times it's a case like this where it's a helpful thing, like the Atlanta strategy against Rudy Gobert last week. They were a bit tighter defensively than Cleveland was in this game, weirdly enough. And also their length and athleticism overall is superior to Cleveland's as far as their roster. But tagging the roller and being physical, and Cleveland tried that in this game, and it worked early. But Gobert was still so calm and collected when he did get the basketball. And in this case, the Cavs were worried about that, about the I guess Gobert kind of filling in behind or rolling next to where Anthony Edwards was driving. And then instead in the wake, Jaden just kind of fills in at the top of the circle, knocks down the 3, makes it a 9-point game. And then the Cavs come right back. Sam Merrill, who all of a sudden was hotter than a pistol in the final quarter and a half of this game, makes it a 6-point game again by knocking down the 3. And then the Wolves turn it over twice. Randle turns it over after Merrill misses a shot on the other end. Ant turns it over on trying to get the ball to Rudy, but allowing the Cavs to trap him near midcourt and steal the basketball. Mobley scores in transition. It's that way, 4-point game with just over a minute to play. And what happens? Well, I can't say this was a good shot in terms of process and shot selection and shot type, but the result was very good. Jaden hits a weird runner, like one-handed pull-up. It wasn't really one-handed, but basically from the elbow, and knocks it down. If Jaden misses this weird runner, that's like 12 seconds into the shot clock, like not even end of clock situation, right? Kind of a forced runner. If he misses it, the Cavs more than likely get a fast break going the other way in a 4-point game and can cut it to 1 or 2 points with a bucket. Instead, Jaden makes it. It's now a 6-point game with 55 seconds left to play, and obviously the odds are overwhelmingly really in your favor to win the game. Ultimately, the Cavs don't score. Jaden gets fouled. He actually misses both free throws on the other end and nearly was a GOAT because thankfully, though, the Wolves did get an offensive rebound. Julius Randle misses his first free throw. So now they missed 3 straight free throws. He hits the second one, though, puts the Wolves up 3 possessions, 7 points, and that effectively is the end of the game. But the Jaden 3 and then the 2 a couple of possessions later after the consecutive turnovers from Randle and Ant, those were huge possessions. And on top of what he did in the second quarter, Jaden was probably the most important player for Minnesota in this game. And Ant got off to a great start. And Julius Randle, we're going to talk about even more, was awesome. Gobert didn't miss a shot from the field. He was great on the short roll. Dante was hot again. Jaden McDaniels scored 26 points on 14 shots. He was 3 of 4 outside the arc. He was 8 of 10 inside the arc. Weirdly, he was 1 of 4 at the free throw line. But just phenomenal from Jaden McDaniels. And the Timberwolves bench was bad in this game. And we'll talk about that here in a second, too. Those are my first 2 big things. The way Minnesota responded early, and then Jaden McDaniels, the clutch moments on top of what he did in the second quarter, which was kind of, I think, an early kind of pivot point for this Timberwolves team is how do you respond? First, the Gobert Hunter stuff in the first quarter, and then getting down 9 in the second quarter, which all happened in the wake of the dust up in the first quarter. McDaniels being a big part of that response, and then also down the stretch in clutch moments, playing extremely well. And then the other thing would be Julius Randle, and specifically Julius Randle as a facilitator. Once again, a big assist night for Julius. He was second on the team in assists. Ant had 9 in this game. Julius had 8 helpers. And like we've known this all year, how big of a the national folks and everybody likes to talk about Ant playing point guard. Well, that's kind of sort of true some of the time. But Julius Randle's the dude that's initiating a ton of offense for this team, who's pushing pace, etc. He had 8 assists in this game. He's had 4 more assists in, in 8 of the last 9 games, or 7 of the last 8 games, and is averaging so far through 4 games in January, he's averaging 28 and almost 4.5 assists per game. The 11 rebounds aren't too bad either. We've seen the rebounding rate and overall impact of Randle increase slightly as the year has gone on. He's been much better rebounding the ball over the last couple of weeks than he was for, say, the first part of December. I don't think there's any question about that. And also the 3-point shooting's leveled off a little bit. A rough December after a hot start to the season. And so far through the 4 games in January, he's 36%. The Wolves can live with him being in the 36 to 37% range. He just can't shoot. In the month of December, he was 29% from 3. But the point I want to make is him as a facilitator. And in this game in particular, when the Cavs were trying to be so physical with Gobert and try to dominate the paint with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, and to an extent they did, like the Cavs won the points in the paint battle pretty handily in this game. But Randle as a facilitator kind of bends that in terms of what the Cavs are able to do defensively, right? Because they have Allen and Mobley, and they would love to protect the paint and protect the rim with those guys. But Randle pulls them out of the paint, not just with his 3-point shooting ability, but with his passing. And teams will dare Julius Randle to shoot threes. I mean, he's below league average for his career for this season. So teams are okay with him shooting threes. But he's using that space to help him facilitate. And we've seen some really nice passing from Julius Randle this season, like period, not just recently, overall. But in this game in particular, he was really good distributing. 28, 11, and 8 is a very nice Julius Randle game. And, well, I'm on the record often saying that single game individual player plus minus is very noisy, and I don't love it. When there's an outlier, when there's something that stands out dramatically, you have to call it out. Julius Randle was a plus 31 in this game, in a game the Wolves ultimately won by 9. Nobody else was better than a plus 19 for the Wolves. Randle was plus 12 better than the next best individual plus minus. Only one player was worse than a minus 6, and Naz Reid was a minus 21 in this game. It was a rough Naz game. I know he hit a couple of big threes. I want to say it was late third, early fourth, as the Wolves were extending their lead. But then he followed that up with some bad turnovers. He had a rough stretch in the second quarter when the Wolves got down by 9. He finished with 9 points on 3 of 6, and he had 4 turnovers. Like, he was great the other day. Actually, of late, he's been awesome. For, I think, 3 of the last 5 games, Naz Reid has been great. And the other 2, he's been terrible. Consistency would be great. Like, it'd be nice to have a little bit more of that. But the point I want to make, though, is Julius Randle. Like, the facilitating in this game and the overall package of what Julius Randle provided in this game was awesome. I want to hit a couple more quick, like, overall team things before we get to individual studs and duds. and peek ahead at what's next. That's how we'll close the show here today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Betterhelp. The show is sponsored by Betterhelp. As we roll into the new year, there's a lot of pressure to chase a new you, but sometimes it isn't about reinventing yourself. It's about feeling a little less weighed down. Therapy can help you understand what's been holding you back by giving you an outside perspective on your emotions, motivations, and relationships. And that's why BetterHelp can be such a helpful place to start. Their therapists are fully licensed in the U.S. and work under a strict code of conduct. They help you match with a therapist based on your needs and preferences. So you're not doing all the legwork on your own. And if the match isn't the right fit, you could switch to another therapist from their tailored recommendations at any time. BetterHelp has served over 5 million people with more than 30,000 therapists, and live sessions average a 4.9 out of 5 rating across more than 1.7 million client reviews. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, couple more quick things here. The Timberwolves crushed it beyond the arc in this game, and that was huge because they lost the point in the paint battle. As I mentioned earlier, the Timberwolves got beat points in the paint wise 66-50, so a minus 16 in the paint, which is unusual, especially of late for this Timberwolves team. But they were 20 of 38 from deep, 53%. They made 9 more threes. They attempted 5 more and made 9 more than the Cavs, who shot just 33%. So another way to look at that is Minnesota might have been a minus 16 in the paint, points-wise. They were a plus 27 outside the arc. Neither team shot the ball well or got to the free throw line all that much. Minnesota was just, again, bad at the free throw line. That's a recurring problem, and I'm petrified that that's going to be a big deal in the playoffs this year because they've really struggled from the free throw line. It's something that I've always kind of believed comes around and evens out over the course of the season. But this team just, yikes, a 9 of 17 from the line is 53%. It's like watching like my son's 11U basketball team. Just the free throw shooting needs to be better. But again, 3-point line was awesome. And that obviously more than made up for that. They were a minus 6 at the free throw line. They were a minus, 16 points in the paint. So add that up, minus 24 combined there, but they were a plus 27 outside the arc. And that's a good thing, right? Like that's imperative that they were going to shoot the ball that well from deep if they were going to win this game, given everything they gave up at the line and in the paint. Dante, awesome. 6 of 10 outside the arc. Jaden was 3 of 4. Anthony Edwards, 4 of 7. Nas, 2 of 4, despite some of the other issues. Jalen Clark made his only 3-point attempt. Bones Highland was the only one that had a rough shooting night, 0 of 3, and he was not very good in this game. But I wanted to point out the 3-point shooting and just how important that was. We talked earlier about the physicality, but while they lost the points in the paint battle, Minnesota won the rebounding battle. I thought they were physical on the glass. They set a tone very early in the first quarter with how hard they were playing, going after 50-50 balls, etc. Minnesota was a plus 7 overall on the glass and had one more offensive rebound than Cleveland for the game. And I thought that played out. Like that was important and was a big piece of this game, even though they lost the points to paint. It's not always like oftentimes whoever rebounds better also scores more in the paint. That's not always the case. And for the number of shots that Cleveland missed, it was important that Minnesota rebounded well, and they did. They again, out-rebounded Cleveland overall by 7 in this game. I thought that was huge. And also the physicality in general just kind of helped them overcome some of those problems that they were having in the paint in this game. And the size advantage, frankly, the length advantage that Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley have over this Timberwolves team, which seems silly to say, but it's a real, like that length advantage over, they're both bigger guys than Nas Reid and Julius Randle, right? So it was important that the Wolves were able to do what they did on the glass in this game. All right, let's close with individual studs and duds. Some obvious ones here. We talked already about just how good Jaden McDaniels was. 26 points on 14 shots, 3 of 4 outside the arc, 5 boards, 1 assist, 2 steals in this game for Jaden. He was phenomenal in that pivotal second quarter, those pivotal moments in the second quarter, and then the final couple of minutes of regulation was awesome too. Anthony Edwards also gets a stud. I know the numbers end up looking fairly pedestrian when it comes to Ant's numbers. 25, 9 assists, 7 rebounds, which actually 9 and 7 is not bad for him. He did have 4 turnovers. He had 2 2 stocks, 1 steal, 1 block. 10 of 20 shooting, though, 4 of 7 outside the arc. Only had 2 free throw attempts in this game. Was a lot more kind of mid-range focused than getting all the way to the cup. Possibly in part, Evan Mobley's presence matters, like, some of that stuff. But he got off to a really hot start in this game, and I thought getting off to on the right foot offensively was very important. I thought he was good down the stretch, too. So, and also gets a stud. Since I'm only picking 3, the third has to be Julius Randle, 28, 11, and 8. 11 boards, 8 assists for Julius, including 3 offensive rebounds, 3 of 7 outside the arc, 10 of 21 shooting, 5 of 6 at the line. We talked already extensively about his facilitating in this game. He was really good. Some good bully ball stuff. He did have a couple tough turnovers. That late one was really bad. It could have been brutal. Down it was brutal. It could have been even worse down the stretch. But in general, I thought he played very well. They just, like, the Wolves' 5 best players in this game were their starters, and it wasn't close. Dante was very good. Also, nice to see him break out of his slump over the last game and a half. He had, a 3.5 game slump where he was like, I don't know the numbers in front of me, but like 3 of 19 shooting, I think, for a stretch. But then finished the last game strong in the win over Miami. And then in this game, 8 of 13 shooting, 6 of 10 on threes, 2 of 3 on twos in this game, 4 assists and just 1 turnover for DiVincenzo. Was very, very, very good. Hit some big threes. And Gobert was good too. 11 and 13. Didn't miss a shot from the field. A couple of steals. Wasn't going to take it from the Cavs. Was physical enough. Took some contact from Donovan Mitchell, his old buddy, turned not buddy, turned maybe buddy again. But a lot of contact from Mitchell in this game. A lot of contact from the Cavs bigs. Just guys hitting him on rolls, hitting him, just tagging him when he's coming through the paint. Like, that happened constantly. And Gobert handled it well, and I thought he was very good on the glass. And it's a tough assignment to go against the Cavs as a big, and he led the entire game in rebounding. He had 13. Nobody else had more than 10. Evan Mobley, by the way, just 4 rebounds in this game. Jared Allen had 10. No one else in the Cavs had more than 7. So really nice Gobert performance too. As far as duds go, man, take your pick. The bench was not good. I thought Jalen Clark was decent. I'm starting to like the Jalen Clark. Well, I don't know what I mean this. Some of the Jalen Clark offensive stuff is interesting, and perhaps we'll talk more about this later, but like, he's not supposed to get the ball much, but he does because of how teams, like, they just don't guard him. It's not quite Josh Okogie level of 5-6 years ago, but close. And I think he started to handle it pretty well. I thought he was okay in this game. Conley was much better in the second half than the first half, but Nas struggled and Bones Highland struggled. They both get duds in this game. Nas had 9.6 boards in 24 minutes, but he turned it over 4 times. Was a minus 21, as we talked about. Bones was a minus 7 in 10 minutes. Missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts. Hit 1 tough 2 after a really nice defensive play in the second. Not made by him. I forget who made the play. No, it was after it wasn't a defensive play. It was after the Gobert behind the back pass to DiVincenzo, who dribbled out of it. Bones ended up kind of like on a second effort hitting a tough mid-range shot. He did have 3 assists and no turnovers, but this was not an effective Bones Highland game necessarily. So Nas and Bones are duds. Studs go to Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, and Anthony Edwards in this game. Next up, these very same Cleveland Cavaliers. Could we see fireworks on Saturday, given the Hunter Gobert stuff, the Jaden McDaniels bounce to himself alley-oop in the final minute of the game? I don't know. It's a noon game. I don't know if these guys are going to be like frisky enough for a noon Central game, 1 Eastern in Cleveland on Saturday. I really don't know. But 2 games in less than 3 days against the same team, it's entirely possible that these guys are ready to get after it on Saturday. Hopefully, obviously, Gobert can't get another flagrant or he gets suspended a game. But that should be a fun matchup to see these guys play. The matinees are not my favorite. But 12 o'clock game Saturday, that's on Prime Video. And then the Wolves play that back-to-back on Sunday. They come right back to Target Center, but it's an evening game, 6 p.m. So, of course, on Saturday, we'll have the post-game pod with Luke and Jack Saturday afternoon. And then I'll be back on Monday, and that'll be the post-game pod Jack and Luke will have the live postcast following Wolves Cavs on Saturday afternoon. I will be back Monday with the post-game pod following Wolves Spurs on Sunday evening. It's a 6 p.m. tip. That'll be a fun one. Of course, the Wolves beat the Wemby-less Spurs recently. Wemby's now back. They lost a couple games in a row, but they just beat the Cavs. And they don't play. They play Saturday, so they'll also be at a back-to-back. So both Minnesota and the Spurs will be on a back-to-back on Sunday. So that should be a fun one. Monday, we'll break that game down, and we'll peek ahead to what's becoming – it's a pretty tough schedule here moving forward. Houston's upcoming, another San Antonio game, a couple of Golden State games a couple weeks out. Like, it's going to be a fun month. And as of right now, following this win, and I'm recording this, there weren't very many games Thursday. They're all done. Minnesota's alone in fourth place in the Western Conference. They passed the Lakers, who are in a little bit of a swoon, and have passed the Rockets, who they haven't played yet, and they're now fourth. They're only a half game behind the Denver Nuggets. They're only a game and a half behind the Spurs. If they beat the Spurs Sunday, they'll have the tiebreaker and be within a half game of them for the 2 spot in the Western Conference. Don't look now, but the Timberwolves are playing their best basketball this season, I believe, over the last 4 games following the debacle in Atlanta last Wednesday. That's all we got for you today here on the show. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. And, of course, if you never miss an episode, consider signing up for the Everydayer Club. It's built for you. You get Locked On Wolves ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to join the club. If you're watching on video, when this is over, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. If you're listening on audio, make sure that you make your second listen the NBA Game Night Show on Locked On NBA. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.